Wanted to tell you a little bit more about our presenter today. Jim Sullivan is from payingforalzheimers.org, a non-for-profit agency. The program Fulfilling the Promise, Expanding Financial Assistance for Medicare Prescription Drug Coverage is going to cover exciting changes that will benefit low-income Medicare beneficiaries in 2024. As many of you know, the annual enrollment period is going to be beginning on October 15th, and we know how that impacts so many of our clients and the community. And he wants to be able to provide some of those, choices and some support so we can all support our clientele. A little bit of background on Jim. And if you haven't seen Jim, he is a volunteer community educator for the Alzheimer's Association, and has been designated an Alzheimer's Association National Community Leader. He even attended the Community Summit Leadership Conference in 2023 in San Diego. He spent over 20 years as a financial advisor working with individuals diagnosed with a chronic or terminal illness and their families. He's written over 100 articles for the Association of International Certified Professional Accountants on the impact of chronic and terminal illness on household budgets. His latest article, Helping Clients After an Alzheimer's Diagnosis, appeared in the August 2023 issue of the Journal of Accountancy, published by the AICPA, which was the association I mentioned earlier. He's also the author of the AICPA book, Retirement Healthcare Planning Guide, which is currently in its 6th edition, and a new publication, Health Transitions Guide, written specifically for CPA planners assisting clients undergoing significant changes in their health and how it impacts their financial plans. He is the president of the non-for-profit agency Paying for Alzheimer's that assists individuals and their caregivers with planning for the costs of Alzheimer's with webinars and one-on-one financial coaching. I'll share Jim's contact information in the chat, and we are so very excited and honored to have you with us. So I'm going to hand it on over to you, Jim.
Thank you, Renee. Let me get my presentation up on the screen. Is it there?
Not yet.
I do not see the share screen.
Oh no, let me make sure. Hold on one moment.
Oh, here it is.
There.
I got it.
Okay. All right, we're not seeing your screen. Let's just make sure. You should have access to everything, but okay. Give us a moment. Try again, Jim. There we go. Looks like something's coming up. Perfect.
All right, are we ready?
There we go. All yours. Take it away.
Good, thanks again. As Renee mentioned, my name's Jim Sullivan. I'm a retired CPA, and before retiring, my practice focused on working with individuals diagnosed with chronic and terminal illnesses and their families on issues related to what happens to their financial plan when that type of diagnosis is received, because I thought there's such special circumstances. I worked with families where they had a family member diagnosed with ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's, and each disease presents differently, and each disease presents differently in each individual with the disease. And so I always told families that when this diagnosis is received, it's obviously very traumatic. And whatever you had as your financial plan in place was broken. And for some families, they didn't really have a financial plan in place. I worked a lot with the ALS Association of Greater Chicago, with the Alzheimer's Association, and with families struggling with these type of issues. And just prior to retiring, there's 6 kids in my family. I lost an older sister to a dementia called Binswanger's, which is a vascular dementia. Kathy had been diagnosed maybe 4 or 5 years earlier. And like with a lot of dementias, she didn't die of the dementia. She died with the dementia because, as with all dementias, as you progress in the disease, you work backwards. So some of your most basic bodily functions are lost as you get closer to death. You lose your higher functions early in the disease process. So Kathy had lost the ability to swallow, and she was eating lunch at the nursing home, choked, and unfortunately lost a lot of oxygen before they could get to her. And it was decided after 2 or 3 days on a respirator that my brother-in-law and her 3 kids decided to let her go. And then about a year ago, on October 3rd of last year, I lost an older brother to Alzheimer's disease. And Rick had been diagnosed probably about 3 or 4 years. He was only 69 when he passed away. And that kind of reignited my interest in working with families who have this type of diagnosis, in particular, working with low income and low resource families, because as you can imagine, these are devastating diseases. And if you're already working and struggling financially, this type of diagnosis causes even a greater burden. And for those families that I was working with, a lot of times, not only was the diagnosis traumatic, but now they had to struggle with the finances. So paying for Alzheimer's.org is a not-for-profit. We work with everybody, regardless of their ability to pay. And the biggest thing that I noticed in being a spokesperson for the Alzheimer's Association was the amount of need, and I'm sure you see this in many of your practices, the financial problems that this diagnosis causes. So I developed an approach to helping families that we provide through the Alzheimer's organization, through paying for Alzheimer's.org. A lot of it I learned as I developed my practice over the years, but I really felt like with my brother and sister, we were lucky in the sense that they had the financial resources to be comfortable towards the end of their lives. But that's not true, obviously, for most families. And for a lot of families where a diagnosis like this is received, they eventually run out of assets. It's a tremendous strain. And I think that by getting organized, once a diagnosis is made, particularly with your finances, that relieves a lot of the tension and anxiety and allows the family to focus on what I think is even more important, and that's assuring that your loved one gets the care that he or she desires and that the family desires for him or her. And that's really the ultimate goal of what we do, is because of the anxiety that comes with this type of diagnosis. Helping people get organized, particularly around finances, helps relieve that anxiety and helps them focus on more important things. Now, what we're going to cover today is we're going to talk very briefly about the annual enrollment period coming up, give you a little bit of a refresher. That begins on October 15th and lasts through December 7th. And it gives individuals the opportunity to make changes to their Medicare Part D prescription drug coverage. And this is a very important. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't do it. I always tell families, clients that use this period to reassess your Medicare coverage. Our focus today is just going to be on prescription drug coverage because there's been a lot of changes thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act of a couple of years ago that are really going to be beneficial to your lower income clients. And that to me is that to me is a promise being fulfilled by this legislation. When I started working with Part D back in 2006, it began, believe it or not, as just a discount program. The government issued discount cards to Medicare beneficiaries, and you got some percentage off your prescription drugs. Then it developed after a year or two into an insurance plan, but it still has a lot of holes in it in terms of the cost to the average participant. And I look at this, the latest changes is we've slowly gotten there after 17 years to having the initial promise of Part D prescription drug coverage fulfilled. Believe it or not, prior to Part D being added in 2006, there was no real drug coverage provided by Medicare. But I think as you saw drugs become more sophisticated, as the cost benefit ratio improved, in other words, it was actually cheaper to provide some beneficiaries a drug in terms of their care than let them and pay for the drug, then let them go without the drug at all. And we've seen that even more so since 2006, but drugs have become more expensive. Unfortunately, a lot of people do what's called, they walk away from the pharmacy counter without fulfilling a prescription, because even with this program in place, it was too expensive for people. I take a drug, I'm over age 65. I take a drug called Ozempic, and I actually don't take it for diabetes. I take it what's called off-label. It's actually also good for your heart. I have a heart condition, but this time of year in the plan, my drug goes from $47 a month. For now, for October, November, and December, I'll be paying out of pocket $275 a month. So you can imagine somebody who is not as fortunate as my family is, that's still quite a bit of money. And for a lot of people, they can't afford to get that prescription filled. And that's one of the things we also do at Paying for Alzheimer's.org, help people identify where they might get a financial assistance through certain foundations to help them afford the out-of-pocket cost of drugs. But you'll see in a few minutes, beginning in 2024 and especially in 2025, many of these problems as far as affordability will become easier to bear for your clients. Why is our discussion so important? Recent legislation, as I mentioned, the Inflation Reduction Act, has directly increased financial assistance for lower income beneficiaries. But what I call the forgotten middle will also benefit those people who are in the middle class, lower middle class, even upper middle class. When you're dealing with a disease like Alzheimer's disease, where a lot of the costs you incur are for cost of care that is not covered by Medicare, that's a tremendous burden on any family except the very wealthiest. And so that's why with I really feel our calling, Our purpose is to help families understand how these diseases progress, what they can expect in terms of the cost of the disease, both in terms of what's going to be covered by Medicare, but also what's going to be expected to be paid out of pocket for families, and how certain programs like Medicaid combined with Medicare can be of great help to lower income families. But a lot of these benefit plans go unused, believe it or not. And that's our other focus, is on educating people through webinars where we give people good general background on Medicare and Medicaid and how it works, the cost of the disease. But then we take that a step further. Once you've attended one of our webinars, we then have you meet online with a financial coach who will take all that general information you get provided, give us your specific information financially, and we'll create an action plan for you that you leave with. And then we'll check in with you periodically to see how you're doing and if you have any questions. So both lower income and the forgotten middle will benefit from this program. Why is this important to you? A lot of your clients may have Medicare questions. In fact, I would guess they all do, and they may come to you in need of guidance, and you may feel really unqualified, or this isn't an area that you work in to provide adequate guidance. That's where we can help in dealing with those clients and answering questions. Everybody has grandparents, parents, friends who are Medicare beneficiaries and may need your help. A lot of information is shared among beneficiaries. When my mother-in-law, who passed away a year ago, she died at 100 years and 6 months. And no matter what I told her, I'd been working in Medicare for over 20 years, but no matter what I told her, she would have to clear it with her friend, Yvonne. As if what I told her wasn't good enough, she'd have to go to Yvonne and ask and check my answer. But everybody has that. Medicare beneficiaries are to me desperately in need of help. And going to an insurance salesperson is not always helpful. It's not that I have anything against insurance professionals, but we don't sell any products. We don't make referrals. We just work on education and creating that action plan I talked about. Some of you listening may already be Medicare age, as I am. And every year I go through this process for myself to determine, am I best covered given my various health issues that I have? And for 2 years, starting back in September 2020, I had bleeding ulcers, I had COVID, I had heart problems. So I was very grateful to have Medicare in place and happy that I had the knowledge about Medicare so I could seek the best help possible for my various medical conditions. And I'm doing the same thing right now. The information for 2024 became available October 1st. So I can look at that information, although technically I can't enroll in a new plan if I move my plan until October 15th. But it's the same exercise I do every year because I'm going to look at my current coverage, including my current drugs, and see if my current coverage is still adequate to meet my needs next year. So as I mentioned, the annual enrollment period is October 15th through December 7th. The great thing about the annual enrollment period is that you can switch plans for your Medicare prescription drug plan, or if you're familiar with them, Medicare Advantage plans, either Medicare Advantage plan with prescription drug coverage or without. These are all plans that you can change during the annual enrollment period, and you do not have to answer health questions. So it doesn't matter if, God forbid, you were recently diagnosed with cancer. you can move from one Medicare Advantage plan to another for 2024, and they cannot ask you health questions, which normally insurance companies can do under certain circumstances, and they deny you coverage. Same thing with Part D prescription drug plans. You can make a change. And here, just quickly, there's two reasons you might want to make a change. Number one is because your own drug needs have changed during the year. Your doctor has added a drug or you dropped a drug. So you want to go and you want to look, is the Part D plan I'm in 2023 still good for me in 2024? The other reason you may want to change is that the insurance company itself could have changed the formulary, which they often do every year, so that their formulary no longer meets your needs. But with the annual enrollment period, you can make those changes without worrying about denied coverage because of pre-existing conditions. All the changes will be effective January 1st of 2024. If you do make a change, or if your family member or friends make a change, that'll be done automatically. You don't have to call the old insurance company or your old plan and let them know. So what are the biggest changes for 2024? First of all, there's expansion of the federal, what's called the Lower Income Subsidy, LIS, also known as Extra Help, for Part D coverage. Under in 2023 and in prior years, they used to have different levels. You had a full participation depending on your income and your resources, or you had partial participation because you had slightly higher income and resources. That's been done away with. It was confusing. I think a lot of people failed to enroll because of the confusion. But now everybody will have available to them full participation and full financial assistance with their Part D plan. And by assistance, I mean it'll help them pay their monthly premium. It'll help them pay co-insurance and co-payments. And it'll also pay the annual deductible, which is very helpful to people on limited income. The other big change is when you reached catastrophic coverage, which means you had a certain amount of spending, you and the insurance company, and let's say, I'll simplify it, it's about $8,200 during the year. Once you reach that, you were in catastrophic coverage. Under the old rules, you had to pay either the greater of either a flat amount for the drug, say $10 a month, or 5% of the co-insurance for the prescription drug coverage. Now, remember I said you had to pay the greater of. There are some cancer drugs that are $15,000 a month. Well, 5% of that is $750. I had a client who was a retired minister. His wife was a retired teacher. They had to budget carefully. They couldn't afford $750 for his cancer drug. Now, the only alternative left, we did call the drug company, and they gave him a special discount. In effect, it was a $5 a month copayment that he ended up having to pay. But getting rid of this used to bother me tremendously because people who are seriously ill had to pay the greater of that 5% co-insurance, and it was very expensive and for many people unaffordable. The do-it-yourself approach, I taught a lot of people how to go to www.medicare.gov to pick the best plan given the beneficiary's current prescription drugs. And it's a tool I still use. So when your clients, if they call me looking for assistance, I go to Medicare.gov and I can help them pick a better plan that is more suited to their prescription drugs that they're currently taking or anticipating taking in 2024. The other thing I always tell people, don't stop comparison shopping just because you have Medicare prescription drug coverage. If you know GoodRx, Single Care, I think Mariano's has a discount card. I still comparison shop. I think I take 8 different drugs and I still get on some of my drugs better pricing through GoodRx than I do through Medicare. So I use my discount card. I'm going to talk again on November 13th. We're going to talk about more about Medicare and other sources of financial assistance that's available for helping your clients meet drug costs. There's a lot of financial assistance out there that a lot of people aren't even aware of. And our goal is to teach people about those sources to help them with their out-of-pocket costs. We're going to talk very briefly about Leqembi, which is a new drug that helps slow the progression of Alzheimer's disease in some people. It's not a cure, but we're going to talk about how Medicare is going to cover that very expensive drug and how to plan for it. And finally, we're going to talk about a couple other changes to Part D in 2025 that I think is even more good news for low income and middle income families struggling with paying for the cost of Medicare prescription drugs. What can I do for you? I'm happy to act as a resource for you and your clients. If you have any questions, give me a call. I think Renee is going to put my phone number up. It's also on this slide. I'll be happy to talk to them or hold webinars on how to make the best choices possible for your Part D coverage. I can conduct educational webinars and seminars, not only for your clients, but for other professionals who deal with clients who may have questions. This is a great opportunity to me to take full and better advantage of Medicare coverage than what a lot of people do currently. Because if you don't look every year at your coverage, you can quickly become more expensive than it needs to be if you just take a few minutes a year looking at your coverage and making changes. As I mentioned, we're a not-for-profit financial education and coaching agency. We sell no products. We make no referrals. We work with people regardless of their ability to pay. You can also contact me at jim@payingforalzheimers.org if you have any questions you want to send me via email. But other than that, I think we're entering a great number of changes are being made to Medicare, including enhanced home care benefits that I think will make a huge difference in the lives of not only people with Alzheimer's, but our clients who are aged, frail. They may have ALS, Parkinson's, but I think home care is going to be increased. Aid is going to be increased substantially over the next few years. So I'll be happy to answer any questions or give me a call later or send me a email if you have any questions.
Jim, thank you so much for that fantastic presentation. I know personally as a social worker, trying to work with families, trying to work with individuals, and going down this very dark and scary road, it's intimidating. And if you don't have the help and you don't have the resources like this or like your agency, I mean, it is, it can be troublesome. So I'm very thankful that you have this available. Does anyone have any questions for Jim? Feel free to unmute yourself if you have questions, or you can put them in the chat.
Hi,
Nope,
Jen.
that's it. Go ahead.
Can I ask a question related? It's not part D, but it is about what you just mentioned, the in-home care financial
Mhm.
benefits that will come through Medicare. I know that it was really rare for that to be covered, and I know that some MAP plans have that now. Um, Will this be available for all Medicare users at one point? And do we know how much? And what we're finding, families are having trouble explaining the benefit when they call it in, because so many of the reps are used to hearing home health and they think it's nursing, PT, OT, and I'm like saying, no, it's a different kind of care. So do you know the language people should ask for when they call and ask for this benefit? Is it private care? Is it homemaker services? Is it private duty care? What do we call it when we're asking?
Yeah, it's either personal care or private duty care. Here, it's always been misunderstood. Medicare currently provides home health care under a certain set of circumstances where a personal care person, I don't know, not a nurse, doesn't have to be a skilled nurse or a registered nurse. It can be just a CNA, it can be somebody just helping with personal care, up to 35 hours a week. The problem is it took a lawsuit, and if you write anything down, write this down, JIMMO, JIMO. That is the lawsuit that forced the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services to communicate more fully what type of home care is available under Medicare. And here I'm talking not about skilled nursing, I'm talking about someone that can assist your family member with getting dressed, with going to the bathroom, going to the toilet, showering, personal care that normally, if you call an agency, they'll say, well, Medicare doesn't pay for that. Well, Medicare does pay for that. And that's what the JIMO decision was. It forced Medicare to be better at describing that type of personal care, which is what I think your families are looking for, because that's the type of help that the skilled nursing's always been available. But if you have a skilled nurse coming in, you can also have your care plan include for that type of personal care that's needed, that's not at the level of a nurse, but more of a personal care professional. So that's JIMO. What's coming up was just announced by CMS earlier a month or two ago, and that's GUIDE, GUIDE, which is an acronym. It's a horrible acronym, and it stands for Guiding an Improved Dementia Experience Model. And what CMS is going to be doing, in fact, it's already underway, is help to train home caregivers. Not everybody is a natural caregiver. Training is helpful, and they're going to start training caregivers and also designing benefit programs around the individual, the person diagnosed with the disease who's living at home, and try to give them access to more services to make that experience much better than it is now. And what I've been surprised at, frankly, is how quickly this is moving along. But GUIDE is, I think, they roll out some services as early as next summer. They're already asking for proposals. So that's why I'm optimistic that between what I just talked to you about now with the JIMO decision and what's coming up, that there'll be a lot more services available for people who are at home and being cared for by loved ones.
Jim, if you have any information that you can share or anything that kind of details this written out, would you mind sending that to me so I can share with everyone as well? Because I think being able to see some of those, I'm one of those visual people that I want to see that broken down and take a look at, what's available too. And we'll email it to everyone in the group too, if that's okay.
Yeah, in fact, there are a couple things I was looking at just again this morning that I
Okay.
think the people at CMS did a nice job of explaining the differences between common demand. I can't really say it, but I'll send you this because this to me is a great summary
Great.
of the differences between dementia care at home now versus what they envision dementia care being like in a year or two. And that's what I'm excited about.
And it looks like you have another question from Regina. Regina, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay, hi everyone. Jim, that was a great presentation, very
Thank you.
informative. My question is for providing a resource and doing webinars and educational seminars. Do you have a fee that you charge if someone calls and asks questions, or if somebody wants a presentation? Is there like a fee or anything? I know you're not for profit, but
We're not for profit. We are going to be funded through different organizations. We're just getting off the ground. So for now, just feel free to have people call me or call me with questions, and there's no fee.
all right, thank you.
Jim, you have another question from Harriet Dart, and it says, will these details and acronyms be expanded upon for the November share presentation? I think for Harriet, and just to kind of clarify, you're talking about some of the different programs that Jim is mentioning. Is that what you're looking for? Yes. Okay, I see your head going. Sounds good. Jim, do you want to answer that?
Well, it wasn't because these presentations are 20 minutes, somewhat limited in what I can cover, but I'm more than happy to see what I can do to cover this in some detail on November 13th. And I'll try to create a guide that I can send out that will help people better understand what's coming up.
And just to add to that, whatever Jim sends over, I will also be making sure that I, enter all of those details and can put those, any flyers or anything else that he shares, I'll help expand upon some of those in a follow-up email. So we'll make sure everyone gets those things broken down for you. Because as he said, we've only got so much time together, but we want to make sure it's clear for everyone. So I will work with Jim and get that all taken care of. But great question.
I'll be happy to help with that.
Yep. Awesome. So many great questions. Again, I know that these are great resources, great information, and I appreciate this immensely. I see some resources that have been shared about some programs. Thank you, Dr. Brantley, for sharing that. One thing I really quickly wanted to just touch upon before I open the floor, because I know we're running short on time here. You would have received an email from Janelle recently with a link to a Google form, which I'm actually going to pop up into the chat really quick. At one of our recent our monthly community partner meetings, there was a really big interest expressed on the topic of challenging behaviors in older adults. And we have been working closely with our very own Tessa McEwen, who would like to be able to present in December for a special presentation on the topic of responding to challenging behaviors in older adults. But in order to do that, we would like to work with you and answer any questions that you have in advance. Give me 1 second. So we've created this Google link to help meet your needs for this presentation. If you could fill that out, just give us a little bit more info. We'd really appreciate it. I'll send out an email. Tessa, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I think that's really great. We really wanted to just get people's perspective on what they would like to know about which kind of challenging behaviors to address in a residential care setting. I think that is the primary population, is inside a residential care setting, what kind of tough moments are being witnessed that we can help problem solve around. That way we can tailor the conversation as closely as possible.
Perfect. Thank you, Tessa. I appreciate that. Again, that Google Doc link is in the chat for you. I'll email it out again. Oh, Harriet, I see you have a question. Go ahead.
Yes. When you say residential care setting, do you mean congregate residential or individual home?
Renee, I believe this is an independent senior community.
Senior living, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Oh, and I have a question
Philip-
that might be off subject when you get to after everything else done.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Harriet. Phyllis, looks like you have a question too.
Yeah, just a quick question. I know the original conversation came out of kind of these living situations, but if we had people who are involved in research who might have questions about kind of the relationship between like a research assistant and a research participant who are older adults, would this be a good format for people to attend and fill out the Google form to have their questions answered?
I mean, I think you're welcome to attend. I think, but what this whole idea was to be able to give more resources and to be able to kind of help through some of these different behaviors. But I do think that it's also worth being able to learn and understand some of the experiences that are going on in some of these senior living buildings. So that may be beneficial in that sense, if that makes sense. And we can always talk offline if you'd like to about it.
Yeah, that's helpful. Just good to know kind of who to point this to.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I've got another question. Susan, go ahead.
Okay. Let's see, am I unmuted? Yes. Okay. This is, I'm a little bit concerned about the kind of cliquishness that happens in a lot of our senior gatherings, which are off-putting to some so that they don't participate. Now, this is a bit off topic from what you're looking for, but if there were a way of addressing this and how to kind of, head it off and make these gatherings more welcoming to all, that would be good too.
I mean, Tessa, I don't want to speak for you, but I think that is it's a challenging behavior in itself. You are in these environments and you're trying to ensure that you have that community setting, you have everyone being able to be comfortable with one another. Tessa, are you okay with her being able to add that into that list and some of the questions?
Can you help specify, is it adding the scenario or adding, what would we be adding? Would you say?
Susan, you want me to?
I don't know, really. It's hard to describe. It's almost as we get older, we become more and more like we were as adolescents, and the kind of cliquishness that takes place. And I understand people like to get together with their friends, but often it's not just getting together with your friends. It's like ignoring other people and just being unwelcoming, not inclusive. And I'm not explaining it very well. I don't know how to address it, but
no, I think you are. I completely I understand what you're saying, because you're trying to eliminate that cliquishness that happens at these events, and like you said, you want inclusivity at all of them.
That would be excellent. If you can add that to the Google Doc too, because that is yet another topic. It's anything that you feel like may make just people gathering in community space a little bit difficult, and because of the behaviors that present.
Well, the key word really is being inclusive, welcoming.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Absolutely. And again, I'll send this email out to everyone. Again, I know Janelle sent it out a few weeks ago, but we'd just love to have your responses, because that will make for a great discussion.